What's up everybody, my name is Kyle, and today I thought to talk to you about what SCPs are. SCPs are regarded as anomalous objects, entities and phenomena that don't fit into the normality or understanding of our world and natural law. SCP stands for Secure, Contain and Protect. These anomalies are guarded and protected from the public eye by the SCP Foundation, a secretive organisation which allegedly dates back to the mid-1800s. There isn't much information regarding their origins, with sources stating that they could have been around as far back as 1500 BC. SCPs are object classified by the Foundation for various reasons, such as research. The class the anomalies are assigned depends on a number of factors, such as its difficulty to be contained, as well as the danger to the Foundation personnel and humanity. The different classes are safe. These are fully secured and contained objects whose anomalous effects are deactivated within containment. It doesn't mean that they can't still be a threat if released or interacted with. Next class that we have is Euclid. These anomalies are more unpredictable and difficult to research due to their more powerful anomalous effects. They are typically left alone but kept under constant observation. And finally we have Keter. These anomalies are extremely hostile and can harm anyone. These SCPs are extensively contained in order for them to be kept secure, as they pose the highest risk of containment breaches. If necessary, the Foundation as a last resort will attempt to destroy the Keter anomalies, but this could potentially cause further disasters. There are 5 other classes of SCP, but those 3 classes are the most common. The first documented SCP was SCP-173, known also as the Sculpture or Peanut. This SCP is categorized as an Euclid class anomaly as it's extremely hostile. It is described as being made out of concrete and rebar, with traces of spray paint. SCP-173 cannot move when it's in direct line of sight. In fact, direct eye contact must not be broken when in the same room with this SCP. If not observed, this object can attack people by snapping their necks at the base of the skull, or by strangulation. This SCP is very similar to that of the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who, something you also probably don't want to mess with. There are currently over 6,300 SCP objects, with new ones being added to the database daily. One of the latest SCPs is SCP-5396, or, as I like to call it, the Mirror of Desire. This is classed as a safe object, which is described as an antique mirror from the 1860s. It has a simple pattern decorated on the sides, as well as bullet hole markings found on the top of the frame. If a person is feeling inadequate, the mirror reflection changes, depicting the individual as their best version. It usually follows with writing on SCP-5396 that describes the state of the individual, as well as how they achieved their success. Quite a nice mirror then. Wish I had one that did that. Instead it shows some hideous creature with glasses. Oh, wait, that's me. I will now read an SCP tale. This comes from Wattpad and is about SCP-173, the first known documented SCP. This short story was written by Laughing Julie 123, so sit back, relax, and get spooked. SCP-173. There was once a vain man who loved looking into the mirror. He would often admire his own reflection for a few hours at a time and even compliment himself. He also had another problem. He would often strangle others who do not compliment his appearance into submission, or in one case, death. The poor man was hit with a piece of rebar and then strangled to death. The cause of agitation is still unknown, but it was enough to agitate him. He was then arrested and sentenced to life in prison. While in jail, he could not stand not having a mirror to stare into. He had countless sleepless nights. Eventually, he went crazy. The other prisoners who often stared at him or insulted him all died, one by one. Cause? Strangulation, or by a broken neck hit by a hard, heavy object. He was transferred to a more private cell for the safety of the other prisoners. He hated other people so much that he began praying to the devil. One night, he did a ritual to summon the devil. He used rocks around in the prison and made a small doll of blood from the prisoners that he had murdered. It worked, and he came face to face with pure evil. He vanished from the cell soon after. A giant life-sized concrete doll was what was left inside the prison. 3 weeks after the incident during a prison riot, the cell was accidentally opened during a blackout that occurred. No survivors were found by the authorities the next day. No survivors except 2 prisoners and a lone police officer, together in the corner of the warden's office, staring at what seemed to be a giant concrete doll directly in front of them. They seemed exhausted but never broke eye contact with the object. They warned one another when they were about to blink. All around the prison courtyard were the corpses of both prisoners and prison guards. Most of them had broken necks, with faces screaming as if they saw a ghost. The SCP Foundation was alerted to the incident soon after. When the agents arrived at the scene, the doll was transported by crane in the back of an armoured truck, all while having at least 3 guards maintaining eye contact with it until the metal doors of the truck closed. It was transported to SCP facility and dubbed the Sculpture. The agents who transported the truck reported hearing scraping concrete against metal throughout the trip and loud breathing behind them. The object was put into a cell for further testing. And that was my take on SCPs. Interesting anomalies that can be dangerous and frightening to encounter and deal with, but are nonetheless fascinating to learn about. Is the SCP Foundation real? The SCP Foundation is not real and is completely fictional. This was created by a community of writers, readers, fans and artists for entertainment purposes only. A way to make people feel scared and spooked, and nothing we should pretend to think is real. If it was real, then humanity itself probably wouldn't have lasted 30 minutes, and it probably would be kept secretive rather than be publicly shown on the internet. So comment down below what you know about SCPs, the Foundation, if you have any scary SCP stories to tell, and are there any SCPs you recommend me to look at next? Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!